Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 26th, 2019 meeting of the Park Advisory Commission. Colin, can you please call the roll?
Yeah. Commissioner Gallardi, Commissioner Santa Croce, Commissioner Morrison.
Here.
Commissioner Borgsdorf.
Here.
Commissioner Ramaswamy. Commissioner London.
Here.
Commissioner Apple.
Here.
Commissioner Kraut. Commissioner Skiles.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to item C, approval of the agenda. I'd like to make one change. Item H2, Environmental Commission appointment. We actually don't need to do that until our March meeting, so we're going to move that to the March agenda. Does anyone have any other concerns or questions regarding our agenda? Okay, moving on to item D, approval of the minutes from our January 29th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, thank you. Minutes are approved. Moving on to item E, public commentary. If you would like to address PAC, we invite you to come up to the podium and speak. There's a sign-in sheet up there. Just a reminder that each member of the public has 3 minutes to speak. So we welcome you.
I'll go first. Hi, my name's Elizabeth Collins. I live on Porter Ave, and I know it's kind of early to be talking to you, but I wanted to urge you to start consideration of the Ma property on Jackson Road that Lockwood is trying to rezone. Lockwood does not own the parcel. It is contingent upon the rezone, which we're hoping does not go through, but we're hoping that you will start consideration of possibly, Greenbelt funds to help acquire this and extend Dolph Park. It does butt up to Dolph Park. It also butts up to my backyard. I have Dolph Park across the street from my front yard. And the wildlife right now thinks that it's Dolph Park. It's been vacant for probably, I think, 17 to 20 years. I have a few articles I will pass out that, you might have seen before, you might not have, that the parks wanted to acquire it years ago. It didn't happen, but maybe now would be a good time to do that, since I know there's some Greenbelt funds to be used inside the city. So anyway, just thank you very much for your time, and have a good day.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Rita Mitchell. I'm at 621 Fifth Street, and I agree that it might be a really good consideration to add to Dolph Park with the land that's contiguous to it, and I hope you'll consider it and support that. The other item, though, that I came here to talk about is on your agenda that has to do with the contract with Davey Tree for trimming in parkland, and some of my considerations have to do with a real concern with oak wilt. So I hope that, I haven't read the contract, but I hope that there's something very specific in it for the tree trimmers to avoid practices that could incur oak wilt in our forests. One of the parks was mentioned was Almendinger Park, has some beautiful old oak trees, and we really want to keep those. They're a great part of the park. I would like to know, it's a few questions, whether there will be planting, whether there will be any activity of the Davey Tree Company in the natural areas. And I would also, in addition, related to the oak wilt thing, consideration and being careful of trees that are in mixed species area to avoid damage to roots when any equipment goes through, because we really want to keep these oak trees. They're pretty cool. And I'd like to know what's going to be done with the trimmed limbs and trees. The urban tree management plan was one that I participated in as a citizen, and I know that there are some components of it that have to do with possibly using the wood afterward, not just as wood chips. That part is sort of easy, but you might consider some chainsaw art right on site of an old stump. It could be a bench. Other things that could be creative and still contribute to the community. So I hope you'll keep those ideas in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you for coming. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Hello, I'm Barbara Trevathan. I live in the Lakewood subdivision, and we've been going to the meetings about the Lockwood wanting to buy the property so that it could be built into a senior living area. I want to just suggest that the park itself, Dolph Park, is third in the places in Ann Arbor where you can go to do serious bird watching. It's and that can be changed terribly by having such a building put in the place they have in mind. Last year, I walk in the Lakewood area all down by the lakes regularly, and last May, early May, when the birders were out and counting and so on, I went down to the lake in an evening. It was March or May, either 4 or 5, and birders were coming out of the park with their glasses, and somebody said, "I've just seen the Kirtland's warbler, and if you want to see him," and she told me how to walk to get to it. So I followed the paths. I got to, and there was lots of people there to look. The warblers were all up in the trees. We were kind of on the north side of the lake, second sister lake. We were looking at all of these warblers, and somebody next to me could say, "Oh, look," and then name all the kind of warblers they saw that evening in the park. Then I turned around on this little path that I was on. I just turned around, and 10 feet from the path was the property line that the Lakewood people would like to buy and build on. And I thought, we will lose all the other people who saw the Kirtland's warbler. It was just another path, a very short way down. I didn't see him. I was too late during the day. But I would love to see this piece of property be added to the park. It would solve a lot of the problems that we have, especially with the Gelman plume and the preservation of stopover places for birds, because stopover places all over the world are disappearing. And Dolph Park is one of those places. So thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm Kendra Brewer, and I've enjoyed living in Lakewood for over 53 years. And this area has lakes that were formed thousands of years ago by glaciers. Searching Michigan on the internet, this geological formation is unique to the Dolph Nature Area, as well as any other area within this Ann Arbor city limits. These two lakes, First and Second Sister, are the only ones in the nature area in the west quadrant of Ann Arbor that is not a picnic or a playground, but has walking trails and lookouts to study and the birds and the lakes and the wildlife, as Barb Trevithan was mentioning. Acquiring this 3.5-acre parcel of land adjacent to Westover Hills would enhance the size of Dolph Nature Area to the northwest of the First Sister Lake. This would ensure that the expansive trees and vegetation would continue to provide natural filtering of runoff from the slope. And this is a big concern with the Lakewood, what they're proposing. Having that parcel annexed into the Dolph Nature Area would allow walking completely around First Sister Lake. A green area such as this in Ann Arbor should remain a place for the families of Westover Hills, Lakewood, and the residents of Ann Arbor and the outlying communities to come and enjoy the birds, plants, and the animal life. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Pete Jessup. My wife Pat and I have lived in the neighborhood for a mere 40-some-odd years. We moved in 1976. It was our first home. We've been there ever since. I'll just make one little comment about how much we love using the area and would look forward to seeing this parcel, which is right now under serious dispute over good issue versus good issue. People are wanting to help the neighborhood. They want to have senior housing as an issue beyond our hands here. But if it turns out that we still have the option of doing something, keeping it as part of the total park, I think would be a wonderful addition if we could make it. I make an exception about the fact that we're going to have favorite people in the Lakewood neighborhood and in Ann Arbor. I work for Ford, and when I was in Melbourne, Australia, I happened to be talking to one of my colleagues, and he said he had been back in Ann Arbor for a management meeting and remembered decompressing from the meeting by walking down what, as it turned out, it was to the dock at First Sister Lake. And he recalled a very charming way, talk about that lovely little lake. So you've got a worldwide reputation here. People have enjoyed it, the delight of the space. If it should come to that, I would hope that you would consider very seriously finding ways of pooling our efforts to be able to keep that as part of the park system. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any other members of the public who would like to speak?
Hello, yes, my name is Priscilla Cheever. I live at 267 South Wagner Road. I would also like to address the 3-acre parcel adjacent to Dolph Park, which is currently for sale. I believe that the City Council is likely to turn down the proposed zoning change in PUD that's pending. And I would like the Parks Commission to consider using Greenbelt money to acquire the 3 acres, largely because of the concentration of dioxane that underlies the parcel. And at present, of course, it's undisturbed because there's vacant land above it. I think it would benefit the city greatly to leave it undisturbed since we can't track how it's moving throughout the city. In addition, of course, it's contiguous to the existing Dolph Park. Any development on it would impact the wetlands and other, the lake itself. The city has spent about $500,000 to put in an extensive rain garden on the other side of the lake to deal with the stormwater drainage. In any event, I realize that quite a number of years ago, the city, the Parks Commission did not acquire this land, but I feel that with the available Greenbelt money, it would be a benefit to the city, given the where the parcel is situated, the dioxane concentration, and the proximity. It's right next to the existing park, to add that 3 acres into the existing park. Dove Park is heavily used by bird watchers, spring and fall. It's unique in the city, and I think this is a unique opportunity to acquire the land fairly cheaply. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Would any other members of the public like to speak? Okay, thank you all for coming. Moving on to item F, special presentations. We don't have any today. Item G, new business. First order of business, G1, is a resolution to recommend applying for MDNR grant for universal access improvements at Argo Livery. And we have Hillary Hansel here to talk about it.
So for your review and action is a resolution to apply for a grant with the Michigan Department of Natural Resources to improve universal access at the Argo Canoe Livery. We did have a public meeting about this project this past Thursday and received positive support from those in attendance. We had reached out to the Center for Independent Living, the City's Commission on Disability Issues, and had several people in attendance. And so this, we were approached by the Huron River Watershed Council to improve universal access at Argo. Not only is it one of the busiest liveries in the state, but it's part of the regional Huron River Water Trail, which is a 104-mile inland paddling trail. And by making this site accessible, it would tie in with the Gallup Livery, which had an accessible launch added back in 2014, so to allow that to be an accessible paddling route. We're also looking at doing other universal access improvements to this site, improving pathways, adding an accessible picnic area, improving the parking lot, and the restroom as well. And so, and the Huron River Watershed Council is committed to fundraising towards the costs of the accessible launch. And so funding, we currently have $300,000 available in the current year's Parks millage, and there would be potentially up to an additional $300,000 available through the Michigan Department of Natural Resources grants. Right now, we're thinking a preliminary budget would be around $500,000, but we're still looking at furthering design of the restrooms specifically. So does anyone have any questions about this project?
Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah, Rachel.
I attended the meeting on Thursday, and some comments were brought up at the meeting about the importance of having a handicapped accessible restroom that wasn't temporary and that was like remarkably accessible, so above and beyond the minimum design requirements, which I know they're remarkably accessible and remarkably expensive. So I didn't know whether or not the Parks Department had any discussions about that, kind of that resident commentary and what that's looking like.
Yeah, so I think that resident was talking about the concept of universal access, which is designing environments to be accessible to all people, regardless of your age or abilities or disability status. So we do have an architect under contract with the city that'll be exploring options for both bringing it up to ADA code, as well as looking at potential improvements we might be able to make to improve accessibility. Any other questions?
Anything is better than what is there now.
Yes.
What would be the timeline for approval of this grant, presuming it comes? And
Yeah, there's a long timeline. We'd be applying this April, and then grants are reviewed over the spring and summer. We'd receive preliminary feedback on our application in the early fall. We'd have another chance to provide additional input, and then final decisions are made at the end of the year in December. Funds wouldn't be available until the following spring sometime. They have to go through a legislative process. So really, we're probably looking at mid-2020. It could be late 2020, just depending on when the best time to do construction would be at the busy livery site. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions? Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval.
Bob, is there a second? Ruth? Great, thanks.
Thank you.
There's no further commentary. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Item G2, a resolution to recommend approval of a 5-year collaboration agreement with Community Action Network for operation of Bryant and Northside Community Centers. And we have Josh here to talk about it.
Hello. The end of June, the contract that is currently with CAN to operate Northside and Bryant is coming to an end. So in front of you is a resolution to recommend approval of a new agreement. CAN has been running those centers since 2008. The first 2 times that we went out to bid, CAN was the only bidder for those RFPs. In 2014, we did a best source, saying that the work that CAN was doing, along with their relationship within the community, made them the best vendor to continue that work. And this year, we're looking to do that again to move forward with them. We are asking for a 5-year agreement, but also asking that there is a 3-year renewal option on that as well. That gives CAN the opportunity to plan accordingly and to stay connected to the community there. We are also asking that there is an increase from $130,000 per year to $150,000. The work that CAN has done has grown considerably over this time, and the cost to do business for them has grown as well. So kind of what we're asking. Any questions? Derek Miller from CAN is here as well to answer specific questions about operations.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, Ruth.
So I think that Derek was here a year or 2 ago talking about increases. Is there an escalator clause in there? Is it 150,000?
There is a 3% escalator built in, assuming that budgets are available for it. So, but yes, every year there'll be a 3% increase as well.
Any other questions for Derek Duff?
It says 3% compensation increase. What does that mean?
That's the amount on the total contract. So
Just
that
the
the
total
total
contract.
compensation is 150 and then goes
Got
up 3% from that.
Per year.
Yeah, correct.
Just, I guess this may be a question more in the direction of Derek, but in terms of the types of services that CAN is going to be delivering, sort of what's your view of what these next 5 to 8 years are looking like?
Yeah, so part of it is actually catching up with the amount of growth that we've had. So since the original contract, there has been no change in the contract amount, yet our services have in some ways quadrupled. And we've been able to leverage about 3 times worth of additional financial resources for both of these sites. Just with the food programs alone, both at Northside and at Bryant, we're doing about $1.5 million worth of food services in Washtenaw County in partnership with Food Gathers. And then you layer in the after-school programs, educational summer camps, Youth Works, and quite a few other things. But then also recently the renovation at Bryant Community Center was completed, which also increased the size of the facility, which undoubtedly increases the amount of folks coming through for services, which we've already seen as well. And so we're anticipating, obviously, that growth. And quite frankly, any new resource that gets pumped into these sites goes straight into under-resourced families. As an organization, we actually keep our administrative costs under 10%. In the nonprofit world, it's actually the benchmark is under 25%. And then certainly the value of leveraged resources that we bring as well.
And CAN does services in more than these locations, yeah? There's
Correct.
High Cone and
Yep,
Greenbacks.
2 public housing sites, so High Cone and Greenbacks Court Community Center, as well as we just created an in-school community center at Brick Elementary, which is in Lincoln Consolidated School District. And then we have some programs in Mitchell Elementary, which is actually about 75% free reduced lunch rate in Ann Arbor Public Schools.
Thank
you.
Any other questions or comments?
Would move.
Motion to approve from Stephen. Is there a second? Second from Ruth. All right, any other discussion?
This
Oh.
is, say,
Go ahead.
vote first, it doesn't matter. It's just a secondary question.
You can ask, go ahead. Why don't you go ahead?
So, hi, how you doing?
Good.
You guys are busy over there, because I went to the open house.
Yes,
It was
I
fantastic.
appreciated that.
Yeah, no, it was awesome.
Yeah.
So when you do the other projects at the other schools, like for Lincoln and for the public schools, is that under a separate contract?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's basically either different grant monies or
Oh, all right.
contributions that we've received as an organization from various donors.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you so much for
Thank
coming.
you.
The resolution passes. Item G3, resolution to recommend awarding a 1-year contract to the Davy Tree Expert Company for park tree care. And Colin's going to fill us in more.
I can walk us through this. This is a 1-year contract for up to $450,000 for the Davy Tree Company to maintain trees in the parks, primarily in terms of like the pruning aspects of it. On July 1 of this year, or 2018, park operations moved over to parks, and as a result of that, all of the funding for park forestry also came under parks. There are still forestry staff in the city, but they work under the Stormwater Fund. Their primary area that they work in is right-of-way trees and street trees. So what this contract would allow us to do is to still be able to call on city staff for certain tree needs in the parks. They would then proceed to charge their time to Parks budget, which is fine. And also by having the contract for the Davy Tree Group, we would be able to start a more proactive maintenance of the neighborhood park trees in particular, and actually work through kind of a pruning cycle with them. It's an area that I think we can improve in. There's not been as much work on that in recent years as I think we would have liked. And the Davy Tree Company is currently under contract with the city already to also help with the right-of-way trees and street trees, so they are kind of a known quantity. I think overall the city is pretty happy with the work that they've done. To touch on a couple of other aspects of it, the pruning elements as outlined in the invitation to bid, those were actually put together by Carrie Gray, who was the city forester, so we worked with her to form the bid for this work. And as for some other aspects as to what happens with the tree prunings or the dead trees that could result in removal, there are ideas to actually work with Leslie Science Nature Center. They're in the process of starting to develop a nature playscape, and one of the things you need for that is wood. Certain types of trees are advantageous, but we would certainly look to see if we could do something like that through the contractor here, because the reuse of it would be good. Other aspects of it are, just making sure my notes here, there is an amount that they could do in the natural areas. In other words, we asked them to bid on potential work. The only time that it would be done that I could see would be if we had a large tree that had come down and was over a trail and had to be cleared. We would do that in consultation with NAP and the forestry crew together, but there are certain times when we have incidents occur in the natural areas that requires equipment beyond the ability for staff to do, for NAP to do. But the primary thing would certainly be the pruning of trees in the active parks.
Any questions for Colin?
Are the Davy Tree people deciding what to cut and when to cut? Are they working at the direction of city staff?
At the direction of city staff,
Okay,
yep.
so the concerns and the questions and the direction of, are they gonna be cutting down oak trees in Almendinger Park and things like that? If that happens, it's because someone at the city told them that that was a good idea.
Yes.
And it's not because we've somehow given them, go out and
Yeah.
decide what to cut down.
Yeah, so exactly. With any contract that the city manages, it is ultimately, we're going to be asking them to do certain things. And I would envision, for example, Almendinger Park, I would see staff would actually meet with the contractor on site to review what trees make sense to prune, and actually come up with a game plan for each of the parks as they go through it.
Other questions?
Just make sure I understand. It looked like it was basically hourly rates for regular work, higher hourly rates for emergency work, and sort of a not to exceed amount. So we're not definitely paying them this, but as we need them, they will be available.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Makes sense.
Michael?
Is there a price range from other bidders?
Well, that's a hard question to answer because we only received 2 bids, but only one of them was conforming. So the other bid did not fill out the prevailing wage form. So one could probably assume that their bids may be lower, but they're not compliant with city purchasing.
I have a comment here, sort of carries over from my professional work and also from the Environmental Commission. Yeah, thank you. We do have a problem with exotic invasive species moving around, and in many cases, these are moved around by forestry equipment from one right-of-way where there might be an infestation to a potential natural area. It seems to me that getting proper equipment cleaning is becoming more and more standard practice for those of us that are working outside in natural areas. I didn't see anything like that in the contract language. But I do feel like it's a good opportunity that if we're spending $450,000, that we also have the opportunity to help bring this contractor up in terms of the standards that they are applying, certainly to our parks, and hopefully also to their, the people that they're working with in the future as well. So, I don't say this to be a limiting factor, but one of the things that we do have the opportunity to do at this city when we're spending money like this is to be environmental leaders, if you will. And I think equipment cleaning would be a great thing to include in this in terms of a way to be able to raise consciousness about this and hopefully stop spreading around some of these weed species that are so problematic and expensive to take care of as well.
Oh, sorry, Bob. Just to be clear, it looks like we've got the bid response yet, but no firm terms and conditions of a contract yet. Is that right?
There is actually, the draft contract is attached.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I missed it.
No, I'm sorry, the bid is attached.
Okay.
And the bid amounts for the work to be done.
I agree with Mike's concern. I mean,
Yep.
it sounds like something that would be easily addressed in a provisional, a marginal paragraph in the contract.
Yeah, I will have a look back and see if it was in the ITB. I don't recall it being there, but I could be wrong. And we'll see what can be done to include in the contract, because I think it's a great idea. So,
If it's not there, NAP may
Yep.
be able to help you. They're working
Yep.
on these invasive species issues all the time.
Yep.
So.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes?
Thank you. So when they speak about like tree felling, they have a tree felling table in here, and they talk about removing the material or leaving the material. So if they take down a big tree, is that cost to get it over to wherever Leslie Nature Center wants it, or? Because it's quite a difference as the tree size goes up, of course.
So the way that I would work basically with this would be if there are trees that we are going to fell that have the potential to go to Leslie Science Nature Center, that would likely be our staff actually transporting the fell.
So they'll just leave on the ground?
Right.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion to approve?
Move.
Bob? Second?
Second.
Second from Stephen. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, thank you. The resolution passes. Item H, Commission Proposed Business. Item H1, Resolution recommending approval of revised PAC bylaws. Colin?
Yeah, so this is part 2 of what began at the last meeting. As you will recall, the bylaws were reviewed by the Attorney's Office and updated to be consistent with other bylaws on things like the code and ethics. There was some language cleanup. The main things in terms of operations are that it includes a provision now that the LAC meeting actually becomes a component of the overall park advisory meeting. I'm looking for the specific portion in here. Yeah, that is under Article 8. It speaks to the agenda and the order of business, and land acquisition matters would now come in after the regular business. So it would provide for an opportunity to have all of you together one time a month instead of twice, which, as volunteers,
As much as I like you.
It's good. As much as you like me, that's quite all right. I don't take any offense at that. So that's one change. The other kind of main change is there is a skate park advisory committee that, as it exists presently, is a council subcommittee. There's been a desire by the skate park group and also by the park group to have the skate park advisory committee be a subcommittee of the Park Advisory Commission. So this language allows for that. It's the same scope of items that they would be speaking about, that they would be providing the city with expertise on, it would simply fall under PAC. And in terms of the next steps, this was here in January. We come back to it this month, so you can take action on it today, if you so desire. And then it would move on to council. After council adopts it, then it becomes the revised and updated bylaws.
My only sort of question, you mostly addressed it, was with regard to the skate park advisory committee. Like, since we already have the power, even in the revised bylaws, to make committees, we don't need to necessarily call it out. The bylaws themselves then make clear that we can identify committees in the bylaws, but we don't have to, so it's sort of a, I don't have a strong opinion about it, but.
It's the reason, if I understand it correctly from speaking with the attorney, is there is an existing agreement between the Friends of the Ann Arbor Skate Park and the city, and that outlines the roles and responsibilities of the Friends. So that has to be updated to reflect that that is happening with PAC. It's more important in the sense that it's in that agreement than it is in the PAC bylaws, but it's consistency by having them in both.
And then, so is that where the 8 items come from, is from the actual, like, the existing committee?
Yes. Yep, that's right. And I will say, if I can, just as kind of an aside on this, the idea of having a continuing relationship between the Friends of the Skate Park and the city for the operation of the skate park has really worked out well. You know, it was a large project that took a long time to actually come to fruition. And I think actually keeping everybody involved in it afterwards has really created a good sense of ownership. There's very good communication between the city and the users. I like the model of it, frankly, if we have other opportunities to do something like it.
Ruth?
So I just want to make sure I understand, is it with the PAC-LAC thing, is it like LAC kind of disappears essentially and is part of PAC, or is it?
Yeah, so the easiest way to explain it, as I understand, is LAC is PAC. So LAC is a standing subcommittee of the whole. So as PAC members, you do your LAC business wearing that hat, so to speak.
And occasionally we have a meeting with GAC,
Yes.
as I recall. But now it'll just be a PAC and GAC meeting instead of the LAC. PAC.
And we also have RAC and SAC.
That's true.
So,
And I failed to mention at the beginning, we actually do have a LAC meeting immediately following our PAC meeting today, so.
So,
we
right,
get to
so
put this
in the
into
future, when
practice.
these take effect, it would be just posted as PAC?
yep.
And just to confirm, for me at least, the agenda order is as it's stated here. So we would adjourn from here to a LAC meeting and then come back out here for a final public commentary and any other, and that's
Yes.
the standard agenda.
Yep, that's correct. And there may oftentimes be meetings where there aren't land acquisition items to consider, and then we would obviously move on the agenda.
Right.
Bob?
I move approval.
Great. Motion from Bob to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Lauren. Any further discussion or questions? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Looks like we have some new approved bylaws. Thanks. Item I, report from Parks and Recreation Manager. Colin, you're up again.
All right, I do have a couple of things. Winter has returned, and the outdoor ice rinks are open again. They've been open so far this year about 17 days. It looks like we may get another good kind of week or 10 days out of them with the extended forecast. So staff have been going back and forth. It's been kind of a labor of love to keep them going. But on the days when they're there, I think they're happily received. On the other end of things from winter, we are starting to post for spring, summer jobs for the parks. So each year we bring on over 300 seasonals at the height of the season. This year, we're excited. We're going to be doing a job fair in conjunction with Human Resources, April 27th at the Senior Center, and we're actually going to reach out to groups. For example, Avalon Community Action Network, the Neutral Zone, other community groups, and try to get the word out about the jobs to some places where we haven't had as much success in the past. So that, I think we're all excited about that coming up. This week, work should be starting at the boardwalk for Riverside. So that will be going on for about a month or 6 weeks. And just had a couple updates on camps. We have at the Argo and the Gallup camps, the day camps for the summer, we have 510 spots, and they are all filled. And for the Burr and the Fuller camps, we have 1,030 spots for the summer, and those are already over half full, which is quicker than they were last year. So they're doing really well. There is also tonight, there is a public meeting, if anyone is interested in another one, at 6:30 at Forsyth School to discuss the border-to-border connection between the Vandermeer Park and the Barton Park. And that's the feasibility study for that. We will be bringing an update to PAC on how that went, for sure. And in your packets, there is a transmittal that provides an update on the stream bank stabilization project at Glacier Park. And that's everything I have.
Thanks, Colin. Any questions for Colin? Great. Item J, report from Recreation Advisory Commission. Ruth?
The last meeting, we mostly heard about the after-school programs that Rec and Ed offers. Rec and Ed also has their summer camps open for registration, and Josh and I have discussed how that we could think about these as sort of competitive to parks, but I think they're really different and really more complementary, and we know a lot of families are using both sets. And then the last thing I'll say is that there are a couple of spaces open, since I know this is being taped. If anybody out there is interested in being on Recreation Advisory Commission, there are spaces that go through City Council for people who live in the city limits, and there are spaces for people who are in the school district, and those go through the schools.
Okay. Thanks, Ruth. Any questions? Great. Item K, reports from relevant commissions, committees, boards, or task forces. We have none. Item L, we have another opportunity for public commentary, if there's anyone who would like to speak.
Just a couple of quick follow-up questions or comments. When I was referring to the oak trees, it has to do with timing for the treatment of the oak trees, so just not during the warm months. That's all I know. And I think that Commissioner April's comment about cleaning equipment is really excellent and could apply to any equipment that travels across the city. So I hope that that's something that could be included, if it isn't already, that we make sure that we don't transfer seeds and other things that propagate things that we don't want in our parks. Thanks.
Thanks for your comments. Closed session, none. Item N, transmittals, they're in your packet, so please take a look at those if you haven't already. And we are adjourned. So thank you all for coming. PAC members, we have a LAC meeting.